Hello and welcome to this little Afterfall Insanity extended edition impression video. This will be my impression after completing the main campaign on the normal difficulty, which took me around 8 to 7 hours, something like that. So Afterfall Insanity is a third-person adventure game with some shooting, but it's quite heavy on the melee combat, and it does have some minor horror elements in it. But it's mostly just plain action. The game takes place after a nuclear war, and the main character is a psychiatrist in a shelter, and shit goes down and you have to kill stuff. So I won't spoil the story more than that. Okie dokie, so what does this game do right? Well, first of all, 7 to 8 hours is quite a decent length for a campaign, and you do get to see quite varied selection of different environments. Some are cool, some are not, but it's fairly varied at least. Combat-wise, it works okay. It works. It's okay, and it also doesn't look bad. It looks quite decent overall, even though it does have some areas which perhaps doesn't look all that great. Story-wise, it does certainly have some quite interesting concept and plot points, even though they would hardly win any awards, even if they were perfectly executed. And it kind of isn't. The twist in the game will not surprise anyone. Some plot points are poorly explained, and the lip syncing is off, and quite a lot of characters aren't fleshed out enough. So the execution of the story could be improved, definitely. And regarding the combat, it does also have its fair share of problems. First and foremost, the combat in the game was just way too easy for the most part. Now I did play it on the normal difficulty, so it is absolutely possible that this will not be the case on higher difficulty. But what will be the case, even on higher difficulty, is some of the problems that I have with the combat. So the melee combat, which is the main part of the combat, is just way too simplistic and easy. You can block incoming attacks and you can dodge, but I found the dodging controls and the movement controls overall to be a bit wonky and unresponsive. So in my case, I found that the most effective tactic was just to mash the left mouse button, and if you had more enemies than one, then you just moved slightly backwards and kept on mashing that left mouse button. So I found combat, or at least a melee combat, to be extremely simplistic and not all that fun. And in other games where the melee combat was not the main focus of the game, this would not really be a problem. But in this game, the melee combat is the main focus, and that is what you will do the majority of your time in the game. And because of that, the melee combat should really be more fleshed out and more fun to do. And another problem is that the levels and the design of the levels is that most often the game do very seldom throw more than 2 enemies at you at once. And if you have once beaten 2 enemies with standard mashed left mouse button, then you can do it again all over again very easily. So the game keep on throwing 1 or 2 enemies at you, and you know for absolutely certainty that you can beat them without any problems by just mashing 1 button, and therefore all the tension and stuff like that just is thrown out of the window, and the melee combat gets old really quickly. And as I mentioned before, the game is around 7 to 8 hours, and you will probably get tired of the melee combat far before the game is over. But to be absolutely completely fair, the game do let you use some guns quite early in the game. Now I didn't use them because in my mind, if you can kill the enemies with your melee combat, and there's basically a limitless amount of melee weapons lying around, then you really shouldn't waste your ammo. Now, it's absolutely possible, not to say quite likely, that this was a pretty dumb thing of me, because I noticed that sometimes you would lose your guns and stuff like that between levels. So I should probably have used the guns and not just saving them. And if I used those guns, perhaps I wouldn't get as bored of the melee combat as I did. But the problem with the melee combat still remains. And when it comes to the gunplay and the guns in the game, they work okay. Uh, they function, nothing more than that. The weapon gameplay is not all that fun actually. And in the second half of the game, you do try to mix up the gameplay a bit by throwing some enemies at you with guns, and even throwing more than two enemies at you at once. I mean, wow, amazing. And they also have some new enemies and stuff like that. And the guns work okay, but they're not actually all that fun to use. And when it comes to the new enemies, some of them are just plain annoying. And when it comes to the three enemies at once, there is a problem with this game. And as I mentioned before, I found the movement to be a bit clunky. And when you have more than two enemies, that is like three or four enemies, you know, three or four is more than two, then when they hit you, your movement is interrupted and stuff like that. So sometimes I found myself getting attacked from behind, and then I was just stuck there with people just smashing me down, and I couldn't move or do anything. And I found that to be a bit annoying. Now perhaps I'm contradicting myself, considering that I earlier complained about there only being two enemies in a large part of the game, but the game really don't handle a whole lot of enemies all that well. And I do not like this, that when you get stuck from people attacking you and stuff like that. I found that to be a bit annoying. And while we are on the subject of something annoying, let's mention the insanity mechanic. So the mechanic in itself is that when your character gets frightened by the dark or by the monsters or stuff like that, then your aim gets worse. And yeah, that's basically it. And the mechanic in itself is there's nothing wrong about it. But the problem is that when your character do gets frightened, then they signal this by absolutely annoying and terrible visual effects. They blur up the entire screen and stuff like that, and it's just annoying. Also considering that your character can get frightened for quite a long time, then you will move around for a long time with a blurred up screen and totally messed up. So that was just annoying. But overall, I found the combat to be not all that exciting, and it's just average at best. And quite a lot of times it goes below that. Not to mention that it gets old. I should also mention that the game do have some bosses. Not a whole lot of them, but they do have them. But they are basically just big bullet spongy things, and they weren't all that fun, even though it's nice that they are there. And I should also mention that they do have some annoying chase sequences that are basically big quick time eventy things, and they are annoying, but they are easy, and they are over fast. So yeah, but the combat didn't really impress me. That is not to say that it's bad or that it doesn't function, but it's very simplistic and it does not impress. Oh, and the checkpoints can be a bit annoying. Now, I didn't die much in this game, but sometimes I died because of insta-deaths, like I walked on a electrocuted floor and stuff like that, and then I found myself having to redo perhaps a minute of gameplay, and I found that to be a bit annoying, but it was no big deal. Okay, but enough about the gameplay. Gameplay's for nerds. Let's talk about the horror. Is it scary? No, it isn't. No, I'm a person who is quite easily scared. I can quite easily get immersed in the world and stuff like that. But I didn't get scared, I think, any time in this game. And that is partly because, as I mentioned before, the gameplay is just too easy. And if they throw the same enemies at you over and over again, and you can kill them easily, then who cares? But yeah, the game isn't scary at all. I mean, sure, some kid can probably get scared, but that doesn't say much. So if you're looking for a scary game, then this game is absolutely not it. It's a standard action game, and we do have some flickering lights and stuff like that from now and then, but it's not a horror game, so don't expect that. But to summarize my thoughts on the game is absolutely not perfect, and there were quite a lot of different things that I got a bit annoyed about, and I thought that the game got really quite repetitive, and I don't think that the gameplay is in any way good enough to carry its length. And I kind of forced myself to complete the main campaign. I actually got bored, perhaps half in the game, which is a bit sad because, as I mentioned in the start of the game, even though the gameplay is kind of the same, the environments and stuff like that is kind of varied. So I thought that was kind of nice. But yeah, the game wasn't all that impressive. I'm not sure if I paid for it in itself or in a bundle, but let's say that I bought it for like 2.5 euros. Was it worth it? Yeah, it was. I had a couple of hours of fun with it, and yeah, so I've seen some people really bash this game, and the game do deserves a bashing, absolutely, but it's not like it's not playable or anything like that. It works, it is functional, it's not impressive, it's nothing above average, but it works. And if you can pick it up for like 2.5 euro or anything like that, and you just want to waste some hours on a standard action game, then yeah, give this one a shot. Otherwise, if you have a limited amount of time or anything like that, then you should probably look elsewhere. Thank you for watching this video, and bye bye bye.